Hello everyone. So, Luther the Fallen Sun has finally premiered on Netflix. I was very excited for this one. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, rated R. Of course, you'll find this on Netflix, and I believe it's still in some theaters. It wasn't playing in my hometown, so I had to wait for it to come out to Netflix here. But yes, Luther was one of the very first shows I watched on Netflix. So, of course, I was very excited to watch this one, and it was marketed as the ending of this series, of the Luther series. So, of course, there's a few seasons of it on Netflix, the BBC, wherever you want to watch it. I'm certain you'll be able to find it. And now a movie to conclude the franchise. So yes, without further ado, let me get into my review for Luther. So I should say this is directed by Jamie Payne, stars Idris Elba, Cynthia Erivo, and Andy Serkis. And of course, Idris Elba is back in the titular role of Luther. So the synopsis of this one is that brilliant but disgraced detective John Luther breaks out of prison to hunt down a sadistic serial killer who is terrorizing London and taunting Luther from prison. So this show, I think, or sorry, this movie takes place, I believe it might be a year or so after the events of the TV show, after the TV show kind of ended. It's definitely not too long afterwards, but Luther, while investigating a new case of murders that are terrorizing just dozens of families across London, bunch of people going missing to wind up dead in very sadistic ways. He gets put in prison by the serial killer that he's hunting down, and Andy Serkis plays the serial killer. And there is no kind of whodunits. They make it very clear that he is the killer, the serial killer within this, and he puts on a very clinic of a performance. He was great in this. He looked creepy, he acted creepy, and the writing for his character was definitely extremely disturbing. I feel like the show definitely really captured on a lot of those very sadistic and visceral type of serial killer murderers, and it was just really disgusting and disturbing in a lot of ways. And this movie really captured that feel in a lot of ways when it came to, again, to just how sadistic Andy Serkis's character was. And of course, Idris Elba is absolutely great within the role of Luther once again. Again, too, this is how I really discovered Idris Elba or got into his acting, because I thought he was incredible within the series. And of course, that transfers completely over into this movie. To see him step back into this role after so many years was really well done. And yeah, I can't really say too much about the story for spoilers' sake, but I will say that I did really enjoy how this progressed, how it ended. I thought there was just great moments within the film. I did find, again, too, speaking of how visceral and true to the killings and kind of horror aspects of the show, I did find that there were a few sequences, one mostly, again, to if you want absolutely no context, maybe skip like 10 seconds ahead here. But one thing involving a prison break and another thing involving just murders within kind of like a Times Square type area, I found those two sequences were a little too Hollywoody, or again, to just I don't want to say goofy, because they were really terrifying for what they were, but I just found that they were a little too over the top for what Luther has kind of always felt like. I really like the grounded and visceral, again, to just elements and storytelling and pacing within that show. And I found that these sequences were, again, to even for a movie, even for something of such a big spectacle like this, a little too much for me to take completely seriously. Nothing that I was rolling my eyes at, but again, too, I just found it was a little too much for how grounded the show was in a lot of ways. Still very entertained by it, and I did really like where this ended up in a lot of ways. But yeah, again, too, when it comes to the pacing and some of the storytelling, it does make itself predictable in a lot of ways about how the events are going to play out and when exactly they're going to play out. Again, too, never in ways that I didn't want it to go this way. It was just very easy to see where it was going to lead to, where everything was going to go, and how it was all going to come to a conclusion. And another gripe that I have about it too is just there's a few characters that I just didn't really feel like they made them matter in a lot of ways. And I wanted to know more about who they were and exactly how they were put in the situations that they were, why they weren't able to get out of the situations in one of the ways too. again, so I can't say too much for spoiler's sake, but a lot of the victims within this, and again, too, they do play a really good spin on things about who the victim really is, because Andy Serkis's character is someone who definitely has no moral bounds. What he does is absolutely disgusting to anyone, whether they be deserving of his punishments, his righteousness or not. I did find that there was just a few things that needed a bit more context to be super effective that just didn't get that within this film. But really, I think if you're a fan of Luther, this is a must-see film. It's really, really good still, and just a great conclusion to the character. I'm going to say conclusion because I feel like it definitely didn't wrap up in the way that I thought they would, marketing this as the end of, again, to just the saga of Luther. But really, with everything taken together, I'm gonna have to give Luther the Fallen Son a 7.5 out of 10. I do think it is loose enough that you could jump into this movie without seeing the original series. Of course, there's going to be some characters that come in that you're just not going to know who they are, or again, to just their presence there isn't going to be as impactful if you haven't seen the series, but it's something that you can still get into decently easily. Again, too, if you're a fan of Luther, this is easily a must watch. It is really, really good, and I still would recommend it to anyone who wants to jump in and doesn't know any of the context of it, because it is very, very well done. It has very, very good directing that I want to say too here before I conclude and go into my outro. But yeah, the directing is great. There's some really good cinematography, really good horror aspects. Again, to Andy Serkis body language is very, very creepy, and just the way that they portray him, the mask that they give him, all these things is really, really terrifying. And I just really, really like the way that they were able to tell this story, again, to move it from a TV series to a movie in a really, really good way that felt big. And again, to still, for the most part, kept the trueness of what made the TV show great for me. So if you've seen Luther the Fallen Son, please let me know what you thought about it. And of course, if you like this review, definitely give it a thumbs up, and you can check out everything I do on this channel through a playlist down below. And I'll link some up top here for convenience sake. Thank you for subscribing, turn that little ringer on so you know when I upload new videos. If you want to check out the description of this video on my channel bio, there's a link to the Medium Mountain, which is my Discord, where we talk about movies, video games, comic books, TV, pretty much everything that's awesome in this world. So you can definitely join that amazing community, help make it even more amazing than it is already. And yeah, just awesome, guys.
I just hope that someone would love me.